FortuneBuilders.tv, killer real estate secrets. A&E TV stars, #1 educational company, national speakers, hands-on trainers, FortuneBuilders.tv.
Hey everyone, it's Esajian with another episode of FortuneBuilders.tv. Welcome, and we're actually starting what I call our foundation series, right? We've had a lot of requests for specific topics revolving around, house repairs. And one of the biggest questions I get asked almost once a week is about foundation specifically. And actually, I want to remind everyone that FortuneBuilders.tv is for you, the viewer. For those of you that haven't gone to the Suggest a Show segment to let us know what you want to learn more about, you're wasting your time on this site because the site's for you to learn more about what you want to learn about. We're starting our series about foundations. This will be the second part of that. Tim Brooks actually responded on the Suggest a Show segment that he wanted to learn more about foundations, so we've been doing that. The first show I talked a lot about some common things to look out for when it comes to foundations, and really I expressed the two main kinds of foundations you're going to run into for the most part, which is one, slab on grade, which I focused on last show on foundations, which is basically concrete on grade, which is dirt, right? Now there's more that goes into it with rebar and support and whatnot, but it's basically a piece of concrete sitting on the ground, right? And a house is built on that. The other common kind of foundation that you're going to run into that I'm going to talk about today is a raised foundation. Now, there are a lot of variations of a raised foundation, but basically the house is above the ground level, and it's above the ground level and supported by what's called Post and Pier system, okay? And I'll talk a little bit about what that is and what you should look out for when you're evaluating a house that has a raised foundation. Now, there are other kinds of raised foundations, but this is the most common, right? You've got a crawl space. You go underneath the crawl space, you see all this wood. What the heck is this wood? I got no idea. There's concrete around there. Well, what you're going to have is posts and piers spaced throughout the space underneath the house, and then wood coming off of those and supporting the house. So the things that cause problems with foundations don't change a whole lot. One of the main causes of foundation problems is moisture, or specifically water, I should say. Water getting in from a source, not being managed right on the property, and that's no different whether it's a slab on grade or a raised foundation. And you have to manage the water, which I talked about on the previous show, and then also working with professionals, right? Working with your structural engineer, with your contractor, getting the right permit so that the work that you do is done to code, and you also document it so that you have proof that it was done right, that you can show the buyer, you can show the lender. But before I get into that, let's just talk about some generalities, or I guess some specifics, I should say, when it comes to Post and Pier system. So with any sort of foundation, you're going to have a footing when you go into the ground when you build a house up. Post and Pier is no different. So you'll have what's called a footing, which will sit in the ground, dug down. Now every city and county is a little different on how far you have to go down. Usually it's getting to or below the frost level in areas that freeze. And you'll dig down, basically a big hole. You'll put rebar in, and then that gets inspected when it should get inspected when it's built, that the rebar was put in right. And then you pour concrete, right? That's your footing. And then off of that footing, you build your pier system. And then your pier system comes off the footing above the ground, and then your post goes on top of that. Okay, and then your post supports the girders or the floor joists. And then you have your floor level, and then the house is built from there. Now, typically around the outside of a raised foundation, you have what's called a stem wall. And sometimes the stem wall will provide support for the house. Sometimes it's just there for cosmetic reasons to hide the underneath of the house. So you got to look at it, depending on how they design the Post and Pier system, that some of that stem wall could be supporting the load of the house. And lots of times in raised foundations, what gets affected and what gets damaged is that stem wall, because that's where the water hits. Usually the piers under the house are not that bad, and they can be easily corrected with a couple of additional piers. What's a bigger problem is that stem wall, and sometimes you have to remove it completely and redo it. So that's a breakdown of the Post and Pier system, right? You've got a footing, you've got a pier on top of the footing, going above the ground. You got your post, and then you got your floor system that sits on that. Now, again, I mentioned that the things that affect foundations typically are water, and then the other thing that's very common is just bad soil. meaning that the house was built in an area where there was not the right kind of soil, or they brought soil in to fill the site that wasn't good soil. So over time it settles, combination of poor soil and water, and then the foundation settles, the house settles, and you have problems. A very easy way to tell if a house has foundation problems or that there's something odd going on is you go in and it kind of feels like a fun house in there. You're standing at one side of the room and the other side of the room's down lower. You put a marble in the middle of the room and it rolls to one side. That's a very easy way to tell if the house is level or not. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean you have major foundation problems, but it's going to tell you that something's up. The floor of a house should be level, and if it's not, then something's going on. It may not be a major structural deficiency, but it's something that you're going to want to look at. Okay, so going through a house, how do I know if a house has foundation problems? Well, I just gave you one or two tests. You can visually see typically when a foundation's really bad. It doesn't take an eagle eye to determine that, right? Anyone can walk in and tell that a house is uneven when the floors are really bad. The other way is that marble test. Now, it seems kind of rudimentary, but really that's a great way to tell if the floors are level or not, and then get to, if something needs to be done. Now, the next question, and I touched on the first show in the series, is how do I determine foundation repairs? Well, that's a big question. It's a big concern, and honestly, it's a big answer, because foundation repairs can cost a little amount of money, meaning a few $1,000s, some additional framing and wood repair, on up to hundreds of thousands of dollars. So you really need, you can't rely on your own knowledge, because no one in the investing world should spend all their time learning every single thing that goes into foundation repair. It's a waste of your time. You won't spend any time finding deals. You won't make any money. Spend all your time reading a damn book, not getting out there making money. But you do need to have some understanding and some key terms, and more importantly, have the right people on your team. Who are the right people on your team? You need to have a good contractor that knows foundations, and foundations are built of one of two things, or a combination: concrete, rebar, and wood, right? So it doesn't take someone that's gone to school for 100 years to be able to fix foundations right, but you have to have someone that knows a bit about foundations. So a good contractor. Secondly, you want to have a good engineer, structure engineer, that you need to enroll and have on your team. And that doesn't need to cost a lot of money. You need to understand that us as a professional and a business owner, we can negotiate everything, and structure engineers is no different. We're not the person living in the house. We're not the person that's going to spend top dollar. We're not a retail customer. We are a wholesale customer. We're an investor, and we need to get good pricing because of that. That goes with contractors. That goes with structure engineers. That goes with material suppliers on down the road. So you need to go and call an engineer and build yourself up as a business owner and as a customer, and how you can provide value to that individual. With an engineer, if they're good, you can give them continual work. You can refer them to other investors that can use their services. And really, most engineers get paid, will charge by the hour, and then some fees relating to, drafting and different things of that nature that need to go into evaluating it. So having a good engineer is so important, because they come out, they do an evaluation, and then a contractor should follow that evaluation. Other people that you can enlist are draftsmen, for example, that can draw plans when you get to that point, if you need to get to that point on a foundation repair. So you've got your contractor, you've got your structure engineer, you've got a draftsman. Sometimes the structure engineer will also be a draftsman. And then you've got city involvement. And the level of city involvement just depends on the city that you work in, the county that you work in, and the level of work that needs to be done. So my suggestion when you're trying to analyze foundation problems to write an offer, because you got to make these decisions quickly, is really have these people on your team beforehand. Don't get to a foundation problem and then say, oh, you know what? Oh, crap, I got to find someone to help me analyze this problem. You got to have those people on your team beforehand. And that means starting right now, so that when you find what could potentially be a good deal and you have foundation problems, you can send them over there. And if a house has major foundation problems, it probably isn't lived in. And that means you can send people over there without you needing to be there. So having those people on your team beforehand is so important, because you need to, when you go to a house, know that it has problems. You call up your foundation contractor and you get them over there to give you an idea of repairs. The other thing that you can do is, typically when a house, a bank-owned house, for example, is listed and has foundation problems, it'll already have a quote, right? It'll already have a quote done by another foundation contractor. You can take that quote. Obviously, you can look at it. You can also give that to your guy, your contractor, to look at, to give them an idea of what sort of things may be going on with the house. Now, I'm actually going to do a subsequent show going through a house, looking at an actual foundation and breaking that down. So I'm not going to go on and on about what to look for right here. I just wanted to talk about what is the next most common foundation that you're going to see, and that's the Post and Pier system. And I talked about the components, I talked about the key players, and we'll do another show with actually going and looking at a foundation. So what I want to do now is I want to get into our deal or no deal segment.
Deal or no deal?
All right, so in our deal or no deal segment, I'm going to compare a deal or no deal to a slab on grade foundation or a Post and Pier. What's a deal? What's not a deal when it comes to a foundation? Do you want to have one or the other? Well, the truth of the matter is they could both be no deals or they could both be deals, meaning that they both equally have their own set of problems. Some are similar, and they both can be fixed sometimes very easily, very economically, and put a property that is a no deal because it has foundation problems into the category of a deal. Really, I've worked on both. I've done repairs on both over the years, and they're both about the same when it comes to the cost of repairs for the most part with the right contractor. The differences are a raised foundation Post and Pier system. It's easier to get under and actually evaluate what's going on. So that's a big thing to note. And if you're going to look at one or the other and tackling one first, I would suggest the Post and Pier system because you can get underneath the house, a contractor can get underneath the house, and you can snuggle up together and have some fun underneath there and estimate the repairs together if you're weird. And if you're not weird, then you just send the contractor underneath by themselves. The truth is, Post and Pier system will be a little easier for you. And so, but they're both deals. They could both be no deals. And that's a quick rundown of one versus the other. So what I want to do in our final segment is, of course, our quote of the week.
Quote of the week.
All right, so I always like to leave our shows with our quote of the week. And I picked another favorite from one of my favorite actors and someone that I really enjoy watching on the screen, and that's James Dean. Of course, he's not around anymore, but he had a lot of good material that he put out in a short amount of time. Here's a quote from James Dean. "The gratification comes in doing, not in the results." I find that quote pretty powerful because if you focus on the end result in everything you do in life, you'll miss the journey. Really, life is about the journey and getting to that end result. You know, focusing on results, while is important, you also have to focus on the doing process and what goes into getting to that result. Finishing a house, selling it and making money is exciting, yes, and it's fun to cash a check. But the process of restoring something, making it better, improving the tax roll in the community, finding out that you can actually tackle some of these problems like foundations, that's as powerful to a person and to a business as the check at the end of the day. Don't get me wrong, cashing a good check at the end result is very powerful too. But don't miss out on the opportunity to focus on the process and the journey that got you there to that check. All right, so that's the thought of the week, quote of the week, and I want to encourage everyone to suggest a show, as I always do, and share this information with your friends, your family, your brother, your sister, your business partner, your priest, whoever you want to share it with, because it's good information and it's for you, the viewer. And we'll see you on the next show.
FortuneBuilders.tv